would you say that you guys are a little bit more the playful brand within the corporation, where Giant is a little bit more like straightforward, more conservative, and you guys are more playful?
Yeah, I think there's that. I think that, yes, we have kind of this place of that where there is more experimentation and there is more expression. I would say that feels, uh, yeah, playful. And there's lots of contributing factors to that. But I'm grateful that the brand can be in that space. And I think one thing that has been really rewarding is working across markets and together and cooperatively and really paying attention to, like, again, what works in Germany and what is really lighting up communities in Germany right now. What can we learn from the German market? And sharing that across with the UK or with, even just different markets, being in that space of um, sharing and experimentation is really a joyful aspect of working on the Live brands.
Movement. Branding for the bike industry. Together with thought leaders of our industry and branding specialists, we're discussing the art of emotional brand building. There are brands that try to serve everyone, and then there are brands that make a deliberate choice about who they truly exist for. Liv Cycling launched in 2008 with a thesis that was simple but at the time genuinely radical. Women don't deserve a shrunken man's bike painted pink. They deserve a bicycle that was conceived, engineered, and communicated for them from day one. Different geometry, different components, a different identity entirely. Cassondra Spring is global brand lead at Liv and has shaped the brand through a phase where visibility, community, and representation matter more than ever. Her background is anything but conventional for our industry. She comes from social work, full-service creative agencies, and the early days of digital brand building. That mix of human-centered thinking, cultural awareness, and strategic instinct is exactly what she brings to one of cycling's most purpose-driven brands. In this episode, we talk about the courage it took to build a distinct brand identity inside one of the world's largest bicycle corporations, about the challenge of making a global brand feel locally relevant, about retail as a brand experience, and about what the bike industry still gets wrong when it comes to reaching and speaking to women. So without further ado, here are Cassondra and me, Tim. Hello, Cassondra.
Hello, Tim.
Welcome to the Movement Podcast.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Very happy to have you on the show. Um, you might not know because most of our episodes are in German, but our guest always introduced himself. So please tell us who you are and what you're doing.
Great. I am Cassondra Spring. I am the global brand lead and manager at Liv Cycling. We are the only comprehensive bike brand dedicated to women.
Mhm.
I really believe in working towards a more equitable future. That is something that inspires me and really keeps me motivated in the work that I do.
Mhm. And what have been your stages before you went to Liv or to Giant?
I had an initial career was actually in the social services space, working to find permanent legal resolutions for children for victims of abuse and neglect. And I
Mhm.
pivoted from that career path towards working in the creative industries. So, first at a full service branding agency. And then I got very enthused about the digital space. And the era was, as Twitter was coming on, the late, aughts. And I loved the possibilities for community and connectivity. And so while at that agency, I became a true advocate for how we show up, how brands show up in the digital space, and was
Mhm.
given a lot of leeway to lead the charge and to really kind of bring new business towards our clients or new opportunities for how they do their work in that space. So from that specialty, I went towards Ogilvy umbrella agency that was kind of focused on both search and social. And after that, I freelanced for a spell, which I loved because I could really choose the clients and projects that I worked on. It also allowed me a lot of space to do volunteer projects, nonprofit projects in the event production space, and some of which would connect through to cycling.
Hmm.
So those are the things that kind of led me towards Liv, and I've been in the Liv team for 8 years. And within that time, I've had a couple of promotions. I've been working in the capacity of the global brand lead for 4 years now.
Hmm. Interesting. So, just gets me to a random question quickly. So, do you see that with your background in as a social worker and then going into advertising and marketing and stuff, do you see that there is a social responsibility for any brand? You know, whether it be like sustainability, whether it be like inclusion or these kind of things. Do you see there's
I
a responsibility for every brand?
I believe that brands are at their best when they are creating opportunities for uh, collective action and based on shared purpose. So, yes, I think for me, that's what I want to align with. I think that my time here on planet Earth is short, and I want to do things that are meaningful and work with meaningful brands to create or contribute to the future that I would want for myself and for others. So, yes, that's
Perfect. I think then you found the right company to work for within our space
yeah.
because Liv seems like you said also in the introduction. I actually can't believe that this is still the only bike brand dedicated to females. What was the motivation? Because Liv, for most people they know, but Liv is part of the big giant corporation. What was the motivation behind founding a female only brand?
Yes. Well, Bonnie too was the brand founder and champion. And at the time, when she first founded Liv, she was 57. She was working as a CFO with Giant Manufacturing at the time. It was, Giant. Today it's Giant Group. And she was invited to participate in the tour of Taiwan. Bonnie is a petite woman, and she's also a very stylish woman. And she, in getting ready to do the ride, didn't have equipment that was at the top level for her or at a nice level for her. And even the gear was not fitting her properly. And she just was like, I am in a position of power. I can be that advocate for, women just like me who are needing and wanting to ride. So I think she took some courageous moves to stand in front of the team and to really make the case for having a brand that was dedicated to women. One thing that I really, really appreciate about her leadership and vision and where things went next is that she worked with women within Giants to be that kind of incubator team for the brand, to kind of be the original architects for the brand. And so they were in that space of curiosity and, first within Taiwan, where the brand is very strong, of course, in Taipei, kind of like understanding how can we do this, making some early forays together from a few different, perspectives to test the idea, and it was successful. From there, they really continued to bring women on into those kind of key positions. And I think that's been a key to its, success over the years, was that there was not only that vision to serve women, but it was also that, like, let's bring women into these positions and create more opportunities. And so, Tim, even today, when I go to a cycling conference or a cycling event, I look out and I see mostly white men still,
Mm,
that's still
mm,
predominant. And I think things are changing. But I am excited that Liv has contributed to kind of that narrative of like, wow, truly to serve all of population, you need more perspectives, you need more
mm.
diversity. So anyways, that's a little bit of like the original founder's vision and some of the evolution I think that's contributed to the brand's success in
Mm.
serving women.
Yeah. So Bonnie is really like the key figure. You guys also just recently put out this film about telling her story, which is a super, super nice film. I recommend everybody to listen or watch it. I will also link it in the show notes for sure. But maybe you can explain what position Bonnie had when she had the idea that, what how was she able to have leverage on the leaders of the company to come up with such an idea and actually get heard.
Yeah. Bonnie is an incredible human being. She's very charismatic, but
Mm-hmm.
she's a force, and she's been a force within the organization. And I think she had enough, um, one could say, influence and clout within the organization to be compelling, right? Like to really stand up and say, we need to make this investment. And so, of course, it took the rest of the leadership team to really see that and believe in that to make the investment, because it is significant. These bikes are made from molds. Each one of those molds is very expensive, right? So
Mm.
to even kind of go down that path was a significant investment. But I give her a lot of credit. Of course, that credit is shared, but to be that voice and to always, kind of take look at things from a different perspective. Like things have always been this way, but if we flip it, how could they be different? And it takes, I think, courage to be able to ask that, especially when there's millions of dollars on the line.
Mm.
And in those early days, it was again quite significant. So I can't speak to. I think she's kind of always come from this renegade spirit. I can't speak to, like those moments for her. I think in the film we get to see glimpses of just this, life of a lifelong uh, love of doing, what makes the heart open. And truly, though, in terms of cycling, she had just returned to the sport at age 57. Like she had stepped away from it. She was more in the golfing space.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, at that time, she
Interesting.
was really in a menopausal way. And her doctor suggested, you should really, you should get into cycling. So that's everything
Hmm.
that preceded the Tour of Taiwan. So you get to see a woman who is a full business. She has tons of acumen. She is a operator within the organization. And then just seeing from her now own perspective of like how important cycling is and how important it is for women everywhere to have that opportunity as an unlock for so many things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if not the biggest bike manufacturer in the world, who else would start a project like this? So she was definitely also in the right spot, probably, and at the right moment. So how many years is that ago that Liv was founded?
So 1997. It's funny, I should know off the top of my head. So
I don't know
we
where.
are, it's funny, Tim, I have to, um,
It's also not too important. If you we can write it in the show notes. It's all good. So but no matter what time it was, that I can imagine in a predominantly male dominated industry, there have been a lot of hurdles, both internally, giant, and then maybe also externally in the market. You know,
yeah.
what? So can you maybe tell us what these hurdles may have been, and do they still exist?
Yes. I did just 2008 is the year that Liv was founded. Thank you
Okay.
for the,
Well,
yeah.
okay.
And so we're on
18
18
years
years.
then.
Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for that patience. Okay. So yes. Some of the key things, and this is Bonnie's actually so proud of this, is, when we think about bicycle manufacturing, it's not on its own. There's also componentry that really matters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the bicycle frame and having, data that's differently informed to produce the frame and the geometry of the frame. You also need those components. And Bonnie was a big advocate, first with Shimano, to really consider componentry and how to have, like offerings that are for different sizes of bodies. So like a standard hand size, she would hold up her hand and she's like, look at this hand. Like the reach here is much different than the average male reach. So that's
For
one.
brake levers and stuff, for
Yeah,
instance.
exactly.
Yeah. Hmm.
Exactly. And so there was some really, strong advocacy within the industry. So that's one thing. But then you also consider the retail environments. And that's another place where, it can be quite challenging. I think there is such tradition in cycling, and for good reason. You'll have retailers that open shops because they have loved the sport themselves, and they have staffing with mostly people that are enthusiasts and advocates, and mostly they're male. And they
Hmm.
might not, for somebody that's coming in that doesn't come from that background, have a sensitivity or a patience or a curiosity about that customer, right?
Hmm.
And so they're in a space of a lot of knowing, and this is what I do, this is what you should do. And so I think that continues to this day. It can be a barrier because there is where there are retailers that really have consideration for like who is walking in the door, and can I be curious about what type of riding they want to do, and where they are in their journey of cycling and where they want to go to get them on the right, bicycle,
Hmm.
on the right equipment. There are retailers that are amazing at that, and there are those that really aren't. And there can especially for female consumers, it's intimidating. It can feel quite intimidating, and or if you have a knowledge base, you can feel quite condescended to in those contexts, right? So the
Hmm.
retail space is really, really crucial to have
Hmm.
an opportunity to be educated and pointed towards the right direction. In my own experience, I was a cyclist as a kid and super, like racing up and down the street in my neighborhood as a child. And then in my teen years, stepped away, and I got returned to cycling while at university. And I basically bought a mountain bike because I was like, this is how I'm going to get around to school. And
Hmm.
I bought a bike that was way too small for me. And
Hmm.
nobody told me different. I
Hmm.
mean, I made it work. But I think about how many people try cycling on equipment that's not right for them and just think it's not for me,
Hmm.
right? I don't
Hmm.
have,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Or they
feel,
shy also. It also, there's a barrier, I think, when they're in the shop, to basically be open that they maybe are not knowing. They don't know because our
yeah,
sport is very specific, and you have to be. And I also say this is one of my beloved topics at the moment, is that we don't make it very easy for people when they're not really like nerds to be part of our industry, be part of our sport. Um, we have a lot of like technical terms. We have a lot of, all these kind of things that you feel like you need to know. And then you go into a shop and it happens sometimes that you're not really being welcomed in in the most warm way when you're not well known in the. And that scares away. And then if it's a male and then a female comes inside in the shop and maybe wants to get a little bit of a consultancy on what bike, or she may be scared if she's not like super extroverted. She's more like shy, and then yeah, that's not a very great environment for a woman to buy or to participate in our sport.
yeah. I think that those, yeah, they are challenges. Your point yeah. So how do we welcome people in, and how is there a spirit of not just, welcoming and a sense of like belonging, but just like eagerness and excitement about somebody that is there to make a bike purchase, which can be so, I mean, if nothing else, it's
Exactly.
joyful, but it can be transformational. So
Mm.
yeah, that's a persistent challenge. And I think at Live, clearly we haven't been able to, like completely lower that barrier to entry. But I think there was a lot of intent in the retail space, and in some, I'd say countries and some stores more than others, because it really does rely on the individuals. The people that are
Mm.
in the store are so important. They can be
Mm.
absolute heroes in this context. But at Liv, it's like creating that, awareness, the teachings, and also, resources as well for, for everyone to consider, like, how do I get involved here?
Hmm.
And so as much as we can do that in an online space, you still, if you're going into retail for guidance, you really are wanting that kind of, as like welcoming and, how can we help you, and real listening to what the needs are. That's still so
Mm-hmm.
important. And that is a barrier. And Tim, one other thing when we consider, and it's a true business, consideration, is from a Liv perspective, even choosing to have bikes that are sized for women on the shop floor, right? We
Mm.
have some research that really um, reveals the importance of, like, the importance of riding the bike or getting on a bike or seeing how it feels. You cannot do that if you don't have a bike of its size in the shop. You don't even have that
Well,
opportunity.
yeah.
So I think in Germany and we've had a lot of success with demo programs where people can actually, like, ride a bike. They get set up
Hmm.
on the bike and then they have a ride experience and they get to kind of talk about what was working. That's really powerful because you have that moment. But if you don't have the product, you don't necessarily get to have those opportunities for that moment. And that's a gap.
Sure, sure. And so but then bring us back to the year 2008 when Liv
Yes.
was launched. So
Yes.
how did you guys do your initial go to market? How was your initial go to market strategy? What were the hurdles then that you faced beside those, that the retail space was maybe not really open for a female brand, but maybe also how was it perceived from the consumers outside? Were females like waiting for you, or was there also like a kind of a vacuum that wasn't really, like, you can't fill it at the moment, and it needed a lot of communication at the time? So
Mm. Yeah, so the accounts from the earliest days in Taiwan, and again, there was giant brand recognition was very strong in Taiwan. And also, I think because of the founder, King Lu's, kind of just the impact of the brand, cycling was really kind of building up in Taiwan. And the accounts are that there was just initial trials and there was successful. Like, people were coming in, people were appreciative, women were, like, getting on bikes more. And so there was this kind of early acceptance. And that's it was more just like, this works, this model can work. And so I think through its strength as a global manufacturer and through distribution channels already, then you could try it outside of Taiwan as well, and try Liv bikes, and so be expansive for the brands. Um so yeah, I think it's actually a story of early success. And I think the timing again was good. There was kind of energy and interest around. At the time they would talk about women specific, right? Those were kind of days in which that was happening and awareness was growing. And so I think that experiment proved successful, and therefore the growth, was pretty consistent. A big kind of moment was bringing the brands to the US. So that was another, again, because cycling culture, especially at that time, was really, really strong in the US. And there was a lot of, I think, maybe through media, influence of the market. And so that was a different type of investment of, like, having a global team. And this is why there's still, global marketing team members that are based in the US. But really introducing the brands to that market, and where mountain biking was really influential at the time. And so that was kind of another key milestone for Liv, was that introduction and being quite
when
thought.
was that between the initial launch? How many years in between?
That was in 2014, if I have my dates correctly.
Okay, so
Correct.
you basically did the testing phase, so quote unquote testing phase for 6 years in Taiwan only or in Asia, and then you
Um,
moved on and you
y-
went to the US and then maybe eventually then to Europe.
um, uh, the I think that it was in expansion, but there was more of a marketing push in the US at that time. So the distribution had already expanded out of Taiwan.
Hmm.
Um, After, yeah. And I will have to check on the specific dates, and share them back with you.
Okay, it's not super crucial, but yeah, but it's interesting to see how this has developed, and okay, so but when Bonnie pitched this idea to the board of Giant, so maybe you can also tell us how many years from the initial pitch to the first product that was shipped. How many years, month? How long did it take? And how was it perceived when she pitched it firsthand to the board?
I think that it was perceived as a challenge. Uh,
Sugarcoating a little bit here, eh?
it's interesting because there's such success with Liv that everyone claims it. Do you know what I mean? So it's hard to know in those early days. But I think Bonnie has always had this perception of being a challenger. And so I do think there was a sense of like, oh, we're being challenged to do this. And I actually don't know the timing from the presentation to the first bikes coming through the line. That timing is not, I don't have that timeline
Yeah.
myself. Um, so yeah, there's a little bit of lost history. Bonnie is still active within Giant Group. She's now on the board, but no longer in that board chairperson um role. So there's
Mm-hmm.
been, yeah, an evolution there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, we talked about some hurdles that you guys have now, but now would you also see some advantages as being a trailblazer in the female cycling space for you guys that maybe have occurred nowadays?
I mean, 100%. We have the privilege and the opportunity of only thinking about women and women's cycling at Live, right? Like we're naturally differentiated. So there's that. That is a big deal. And from a perspective of brand stewardship and leadership and as a team, we're always putting women first. We're always thinking about, access opportunities, gear, like how we can better serve women. So that's a huge advantage. And actually, again, this is again from the earliest days in the way the brand was architected, where women were in those key roles. It's wonderful to be able to focus in that way on a
It's
population like,
always wonderful to focus. It's always
yeah,
wonderful.
it is. And,
Yeah.
I think that one could say, I mean, I think there's a general, maybe sentiment around, uh, unisex or being, I think specialized with Brilliant in the, Beyond Gender campaign. And I think there's a lot of, um, let's see. There's a lot of movement towards that space, but also there's still a lot of people that are underserved by
Mm.
limited SKUs, by limited offerings. A lot of people that are underserved, and
Make an
that not.
example. Make an example. What you mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's women that have. When I was at Eurobike last year, a woman that was probably quite short in stature came up and she thanked
Hmm.
me, thanked Liv. Like there was no bike that I could actually fit on that had like good componentry, like a quality bike. There was nothing out there. And I didn't know until I found Liv that there was a bike for me. So that's what I mean by being underserved. Literally not even a bike that would fit this person. And not to mention like all the, again, all of the touch points that make it so whether, yeah, just all of the touch points that make it a comfortable ride. So that's a very tangible example of being underserved. And so when you are always thinking about how do we serve everyone, and we go towards averages and we look to past sales, we lose opportunity for innovation. It's like if you look towards the future, who are we missing in that? And even when we look at, I mean, this kind of comes back to, product selection. We're like, how do we meet people in new places with products that really fit and serve them? Um, it takes a different perspective, or it takes at least an intentional perspective to make that happen.
Hmm. May I ask a stupid question? Is it more challenging to create a frame, a whole range of sizes for all the different body types of women than it is for men? I have no
So
idea.
yeah, I think so. The way in which, I don't think, to answer your question directly, it's not that it's more challenging. Each mold, there's a cost there. And if you don't have high numbers, you don't have, um if you have limited quantities, obviously that impacts the profitability or the revenue
Hmm.
factor. So what the difference is you're looking at different data sources, and obviously there's going to be spans of, across genders of sizes, so ranges of sizes. At Liv, there is that extra small, to large size offering. So it's not necessarily harder, it's just a different kind of range from uh from the unisex sizing.
Of course, of course. But is it like my question was more towards
Hmm.
is the diversity of body shapes of women higher than it is
Oh,
with men? Is that more of a challenge? Well, I don't know. So maybe that is
right.
also the case.
Yeah.
Because you were telling these stories from these extremes, the one
Yeah.
client that came to the booth at Eurobike that you were
Yes.
talking to, and
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. Well, I think as a generalization, there are other anatomical considerations. For example, there was a lot of advocacy around working or creating a female mannequin or dummy as people for wind tunnel testing,
hmm.
right? And then one thing that uh, one thing that impacts it is chest size. Like
Mm,
it just does. That is a factor. So
yeah,
there are, again, this isn't something that I'm specifically focused on, but there are a lot of different anatomical considerations. And and they are, um yeah, they come into play when you're serving female audiences for sure.
okay, uh-huh, uh-huh. So when I listened to the video with Bonnie and some interviews, there's one sentence that you guys always dropped for how Liv was on what kind of foundation Liv was founded on, what the idea was, or maybe to you guys didn't want to do the mistake that all the other bike brands were doing, and that was shrink it and pink it, to put it in one sentence. Like
Right.
basically shrink a male frame and put the color pink on, and then think that this will basically be okay for females to ride on and stuff like that. So you kind of from the very first beginning on, you said, okay, this is not going to be our way. Um, but how did you like differentiate in terms of communication and in terms of product from day one compared to the other bike brands that were also selling female bikes and female products, but were maybe communicating it different? So what were you doing differently there in terms of like R&D and communication?
Yeah, I think the key thing there was just having a database that was informed by women's measurements was a really key thing, and looking at that, um, from to inform geometry, to inform specifications, and then also looking at all of the componentry and all the touch points intentionally. So that was part of the process. There was women on the engineering team, on the design team, in the category manager capacities that were, start like tip to tell, really thinking about how this bike is going to, yeah, have, just for women. So that was part of the planning process. It was integrated. It wasn't a team of people that were just, um, yeah, we're going to do the same thing, make it smaller, and then the C and G will be the color and graphics will be different. So that's a key that I think that's really important. Not only because you have the attention and kind of that dedicated effort, I think it's also um, creates more opportunity for women within the industry to be in those different roles in leadership capacities. Going back those years, nearly 20 years, like that, it's shifted. There's more, we've had more progress in that area, but certainly that was part of the success and the differentiating
Makes
factor.
absolute sense. So it's basically a full circle female empowerment project, you can say,
Yeah.
from
Yes.
management to basically, of course, the customer at the end. Um, hmm
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there's that. And then I think it's also in terms of how the brand is communicated. I think that it continues to be an evolution, right? And I think there's a lot of cultural considerations. It is a global brand. And it's like, how do you effectively bring women into cycling and create a welcoming environment and atmosphere? And so that kind of a key piece of that was having brand leadership in a lot of the different markets. And so as the brand was building, there was somebody that was designated, as a lead for the Liv brand, and it was women, that were in those lead positions. And they also had, ambassador programs that were uh, kind of initiated and developed too. So again, I think a lot of these things are becoming more and more common, but this was an early evolution with Liv of like, all right, there's leadership, and we have somebody that's looking at women in their communities and how women will be best served in those communities. And they're bringing those catalysts, those riders within the communities, forward and towards the brands to create more opportunity, whether it's a bike ride opportunity, whether it's learning how to work, maintain your bike and work on your bike. Whether it's, in the US, there was a really innovative program where they had the demo drivers that were going, from out to all of these destinations and creating opportunities for women to come out and try the bikes, right? And then offering workshops within retail environments. So that was how, the brand continued to kind of build up, and it's more doing than telling in some levels, right? And then how we tell the story has continued to evolve, and thinking about the channels in which we're telling that story. But I love that Liv was, there was this kind of commitment to like, what are the actions that we can take right now? And working within, structures and systems that aren't necessarily they weren't developed with women in mind. But today we have an opportunity to kind of show up and in these places where it can have a meaningful difference. And so the challenge then becomes, prioritizing your actions, because there's so much to do to
hmm
truly, connect, and to truly, your curiosity around like, does it resonate,
hmm
and I think that there's along the way, there have been things that really have worked well. And then there are those that, maybe it wasn't the right time for them. And there's things that work in
Can you
one
make
market.
an example? That's interesting. What was
Yeah.
maybe something that wasn't made for the time it was communicated?
I think I see that more in, for example, the hands-on opportunities and working on bikes has been really impactful for some parts of the world,
Hmm.
and not in others, where there hasn't been interest, but then that interest over time, it picks up, and then there's enough people to make a successful event. So that's one example, right? Like,
Hmm.
just maybe I'm interested, but not interested enough. And then time goes on, or maybe the audience develops or culture shifts, and then it is really more successful. So that's one. It's just those workshops, like bike maintenance workshops, that have gotten increasingly, popular, and now it's like quite common in a way. But
Is it maybe also, does it maybe boil down to, let's say, in the Western world? I would say that I would I would still say to this day, at least in Germany, you will have less females working in like craftsmanship jobs, and because it's also not very open for them. It's not like something that is also a male dominated space where, now all of a sudden you're asking for female mechanics. They're not growing on the trees, you know what I mean? So
right.
where should they be coming from? And when
Yes.
you maybe when you entered countries where it is more normal for females to also work with their hands in
Yep.
like, technical equipment, then maybe that was better perceived than received than it maybe was, I can imagine, in the US, for instance.
Yeah, I think there is some of that just tradition, right? And
Mm,
where have the opportunities been? And um and just, yeah, comfort levels. So it feels sensitive to speak about those things, but they're true. And truly, as you said, mechanics don't grow on trees, and that's something that's really been an intentional aspect of when we work with, we've developed racing platforms for Live to have women staff those teams and have women in those mechanic positions. And so, yes, you want to also, women that are enthusiasts around riding or even beginners, for them to have the skills to work on their bikes, and for them to also then have a pathway, into, if they're like, oh, I really enjoy this, a path towards becoming a professional in the space. That's something that we have connected dots on, and it's very rewarding to see that. And so, anyways, that moves a little bit away from your original question, but it is an example of programming that, was introduced. And in some markets, it was like resonant, and for others, not so much, but then it's built over time. And so those same ideas from, 6, 8 years ago come back around like, oh, we should do that. Like, now we're ready. And I do think that, again, as from a global brand perspective, you mentioned, Western and Eastern, there's tradition there. There's a lot of social dynamics that are still there. When we think there's gender roles and that are, still prevalent in some parts of the world, women still have a lot of responsibility domestically, even if they're running careers. And so we're thinking about what, the limiting resource can often be time for women. So how do we work with that? What are the offerings there? Another example, Tim, would be just thinking about spaces that are non-traditional, like the online gaming space, Zwift being an example. I know they recently required Ruby, but how can we work in or be present in those spaces? And, I think working with those platforms and those brands to, again, kind of pull, have women, together in one space, or an offering for women that is compelling and specific for them.
hmm hmm And how many men are working at Lyft nowadays? Or is it only females working at
No,
Lyft?
actually, there are. Uh, it's continually evolving. We have new leadership. Phoebe Liu is the CEO of Giant Group now. And I would say there is more integration across all of the brands. So that has been an evolution. And so I think there is, it's
But
less
they're the minority still. They're the minority.
in terms of the teams, they are more contributors than kind of the main drivers for
I
Liv.
see.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
Um, and now coming back to some, to the the launch years. How many years did it take for Liv to become economically successful? When was the first black number?
Yeah. I actually did a query around this, and I have I don't have the year for you. I don't have this.
Roughly, you can say roughly. Was it like 2 years, or did it actually take 10 years, or?
I think it took more than two, but I would tell you if I
But
had
that would be quite
the
great
date.
if it
Yeah.
just.
It was more than two, and yeah, I did some digging, but I don't have a response for you on that
Also
one.
not too important. I just wanted to, it's also sometimes interesting for other brands maybe to hear, because I think you guys are a great example, and maybe some other brands can, follow your guys' lead, and if they hear something inspiring, that the risk is, and maybe the risk nowadays is even lower, because from my uh, um, from my feeling, I would say there's way more women on bikes these days than like 10 years ago. Way
Right?
more. I can't put it in numbers, but you barely see a cycling group where there's not at least one or two females in.
And for
You
me,
barely see it.
yeah, it's really this is the thing. Like we um Liv has been successful. I think, we had the pandemic now 6 years ago, that had such an impact on behaviors, like, and a lot of people that had different um time, or a kind of a shift in just resources, went towards recreation, and more women getting on bikes was, and one of the, I think, uh, positive outcomes of that time period. We know that for much of the industry, and Liv would be included in that, it was certainly a high water mark in terms of, just revenue. So that's another, how all of the bikes were selling. Any bike that was available was being sold, just like that's the demand that was there. But I have the same sense of, I live in a very bike focused community. And I see more women than men. Sometimes I'll go on a mountain bike ride, and I'm past, like I'm seeing more women, and there's strong communities of women riders. I know that's not the same in all parts of the world, and I know there are lots of reasons why. But yes, there is kind of this global growth of, I'm just going to say generally, women's sports, that there's a trajectory that we're on, that we've been on for more than a few years now. And I do think cycling is connected to that too, right? I do think the Tour de France Femme avec Swift is a contributing factor in some places. There's some research to support that. When you're watching the tour, you're more likely to want to ride a bike, or you have a bike to ride. But certainly when it comes to women's riding communities, there's other cofactors like safety. So yeah, there's some markets where that's less of a consideration, and others where it's still a significant one.
Hmm. And did you guys actually ever measure, if there is a way to measure it, but how much impact you guys had on the industry for females since you guys launch?
Yeah, I don't know how we could get our arms around that. Um,
But what
our
is the feedback? Let's say like this: do you ever talk to like other brand responsible people who maybe are responsible for the female thing that say, okay, you guys encouraged us to follow your lead because you guys been trailblazers, and what you guys did for female cycling was so magnificent, and that's why we kind of, followed your footsteps? Did you ever hear something like that?
That's interesting. Anecdotally, I know that that there's been a lot of inspiration, and but again, measuring that is challenging, and even I
Mm,
think there's been humility in the with maybe within giant group, but certainly yeah, within the organization, within the brand too, of like we are part of something and we're leading the way on something. But yeah, I can't say that we have like put that into a concrete, like, here's the impact or here's how we
mm.
define the impact of what we're doing and how many um, lives we've touched. So I really like that angle. I just curious how we could define that. Um,
But
yeah,
for
but
instance, in Germany, we have the Women in Cycling
yes,
community. I don't know if you've heard of it.
yes, of
And
course.
and I wondered, would these kind of communities exist without a brand like yours being trailblazers and, having, economic power behind it, coming from a big company like Giant, and um, just to the feedback that you maybe have got in the market, and maybe considering also that you guys are the one of the biggest producers for bikes in the world. Maybe ever since Liv was founded, the sales and the production of female bikes has
Mm,
maybe gone up a lot.
yeah, I think what's measured matters, and I think that it would be great to put some figures together about just those, like what those
Mm,
numbers look like.
mm.
Right now, I there hasn't been a report of that nature. I really, uh, yeah, you're asking the question. I'm like, oh my goodness, like it just seems like a gap right now of like, oh,
Mm.
we need to
Maybe I'm also very German right now and want to hear all the numbers. I don't know.
I
Can
appreciate it.
also
I
be.
think it's
Can
great,
also be. I don't
because
know.
there is a lot of, it's hard to, again, it's one of those things where how do you parse out? I think there's a lot of contributing factors to the growth of women's cycling and to the growth of, women purchasing bikes. There are uh, a lot of factors around how we are bringing more women into roles within the cycling industry. I believe that Liv has been a very positive influence within the industry and a driving influence. So I think, yeah, more defining that story better would be a good thing to do. But most of what I know right now is just the kind of, yeah, more storytelling and personal um, stories that and I'm just one I lead the brand and we have all these markets in all over the world. And so together I think we could tell an incredibly powerful story of impact.
Great. And what kind of stories do resonate with women better than they do with men? So when
Oh,
you guys do communication for women, what kind of storytelling um, would you do that would never work with men, and vice versa, maybe?
oh, never again, these are
Never is a big word. Never is
yeah,
a big word.
very big word.
Yeah,
I
but
do
not so good.
When we look at our content mix, certainly I can say that beautiful bikes resonates universally. Like when you see a really beautiful bike image, I think that there is, if we're looking at, metrics for digital spaces, they perform well across genders. There's that.
Hmm.
I think that women are more in the storytelling, what's resonating is more uh, emotionally evocative stories where there's uh, personal
More
stories.
transformation? What
Stories of
transformation
transformation are really
is that in?
impactful.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that we love to celebrate at Live, and we have a lot of intention around it, is shining a light on, it's like the women shining a light on others that are really inspiring them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So celebration of cycling catalysts has been a big thing where we really want to see and recognize and elevate those women that are bringing others into the sport that has and around the world, right? Hearing their personal stories, very, very powerful. But I all I know is that what resonates with the audience, I wouldn't say that this doesn't appeal to men, because I think it feels it could appeal equally to
For
men.
sure.
So I wouldn't make that blanket statement. I do think that even in, race coverage, or when we're talking about performance athletes, that when they share their journeys, the setbacks and, the achievements, that is really powerful, that the
Mm.
setbacks are equally meaningful for people, and it's not just this
Sometimes
perfect.
even more than
Exactly.
than the victories and stuff. Yeah.
That's right.
Mm.
It's not just that trajectory of, like, perfection and performance, it's also
Mm.
that kind of, the progress and the journey of, like, commitments that is really powerful. So again, I'm speaking to what is resonating for the Live audience, which is, a lot of women, and not saying like, oh, this doesn't appeal to men. So I just want to make
Mm-hmm.
that clear. I have
Mm-hmm.
that awareness. Hmm.
And what experiences do you have when it comes to like more like a techie kind of communication with
Hmm.
women? Is that something that they like, or is this something that is it like a small percentage of women that resonate with like techie, like the latest
Yeah.
suspension and all this kind of stuff? Is that something that sometimes irritates me? That always the communication when it comes to the bikes that I'm interested in is always super techie and all that
Mhm.
jazz. I would prefer more also more often like more an emotional approach.
Yeah.
Um, but for
So
some reason, responsible people always think that a man always need to hear all the specs and all the tech and all that jazz.
right. So this is another example where I don't know how gendered it is, because I do think there's an audience that loves to go deep on the tech. But yes, to your point, not every person does. I also, women aren't a monolith. There's a whole spectrum of women that we're serving. But I do think when you ask specifically around product communications and how we talk about our products, that we are in that space of experimentation always, because we see that, you know, some things are more impactful than others. I'm so sorry. It's very noisy right now.
It's fine. It's the lawnmower that goes
It
past.
is. It is. It's a
It's all
lawnmower.
right. It's all right. With Sven
Yeah.
Martin, with the photographer, we had his
Oh,
going off in his house. I was at his house. We were recording the podcast in his house, and all of a sudden the alarm came on.
I'm such a fan of Sven. He's such a good person. And Anka
Yeah, he
too.
is.
Incredible human beings. Amazing. Yeah.
He's the direct neighbor of my parents-in-law. He
Oh,
lives right.
really?
He lives right next door.
Wait,
Yeah.
in Nelson or where?
No, in Gordons Bay in South Africa.
In South Africa. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. I love it.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, I think so. Yeah. Product communications, it is one of those things that we are trying different ways always to reach different audiences. That's something. So again, aside from gender, of just like, who are we talking to with this particular product? What do they need to know? And what's the best way to deliver that information? And one thing that I really love about being in the space of, you know, marketing and communications is the creativity and experimentation, because culture is always shifting, behaviors are shifting, tastes are shifting. So we get to play within a very dynamic space and try new things, and then look at how they are performing to inform what we do next. So, uh, yeah, that's ongoing. And I think you're right, from an industry perspective, there's room to grow.
For sure. For sure. Definitely. So you guys sit within the big giant corporation.
Yes.
How do you make sure to maintain a genuinely independent like brand identity and appearance? Does that sometimes create friction because you want to be a little bit more independent from Giant, and they say no, you have to look more like us? Is there something? Is there like a battle going on sometimes?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I think that brands has been very uh, because of the teams operating independently. It's had a lot of independence and a lot of, I think, leeway. Liv is, a uh, much smaller than Giants, smaller brand than Giants. When we look at the Giant Group portfolio, and so there's room to be more experimental. And
Mm-hmm.
to answer your, regarding, pressure to be more like Giant, certainly not in the way that we're talking to our audience, because there is that clarity about like, who are we talking to? There are different audiences, and the brand maturity is also different. Giant has a ton of awareness around the world. That brand is very, very well known. Liv still has an opportunity to build up that brand awareness. So we're in different places with different audiences. So a good thing is that we get to be who we are within the organization. I think a more challenging thing is that in terms of product consideration and product delivery, there's more pressure to do things together at the same time, and that has some tension. But in terms of
Mm-hmm.
how we communicate the brand, we have a lot of freedom and
Freedom.
autonomy, which has been
Mm-hmm.
really, I think, um, um, which I would credit, the brand's strength to that kind of leeway and independence.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that you guys are a little bit more the playful brand within the corporation, where Giant is a little bit more like straightforward, more conservative, and you guys are more playful?
Yeah, I think there's that. I think that um, uh, yes, we have kind of this place of uh, that where there is more experimentation and there is more expression. I would say that feels, uh, yeah, playful, and there's lots of contributing factors to that. But I'm grateful that the brand can be in that space. And I think one thing that has been really rewarding is working across markets and together and cooperatively, and really paying attention to, like, again, what works in Germany and what is really lighting up communities in Germany right now. What can we learn from the German market? And sharing that across with the UK or with, even just different markets, being in that space of um, sharing and experimentation is really a joyful aspect of working on the Live brands.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Coming back to something that we or you touched already very early in this discussion is how do you make sure that you basically explained a little bit what the retailers, how they look like.
Yes.
I also know how they look like in Germany. I'm working as a sales agent for more than 20 years. I know how the shops look like, and I see also some development happening there when it comes to like having females working in the shop, and not only in the clothing department, but also all over the shop, like also selling bikes and stuff. I see that now as well,
Hmm.
but there's still a lot of room to grow.
Yes.
But how do you ensure that your brand is transported in like an authentic way in your retailers? Because I can imagine you guys have a little bit this challenge, because when you have like major Giant dealers, they also then carry Liv. No matter what, they have to carry it. There's probably some sort of deals that they sign up to that they have to carry Liv, but maybe they don't want really, and they feel like, okay, now they have to carry Liv as well to keep their discounts and stuff like that. How do you ensure that they stay motivated and sell your brand the way that you guys wish it to be sold?
Okay. We that is something that we don't have total control over. And so how do we ensure it? The best that we can do is we do have a retail academy, kind of a platform for doing product education and brand education. So that's a way in which we can communicate across, like, here's the intention of this brand and who, or I'm sorry, this product and who it's serving. And then from a brand perspective, here's more about who we are and what to just like to be informed about the brands. But ultimately, it really so much is depending on the retail experience. They have so much power, and it's remarkable. I do retail visits in all over the world, various parts of the world, and see examples of people that you walk in the door and they love Live. Like, they love it. And you see representation of women, you see reputation of the brand, you see products, and guess what? They're really successful with Live. And there are others that are like, I don't get it, like,
Mm.
and they have
Yeah.
a little corner, or they have not so many people that aren't really talking about Live, and they aren't as successful. And
Mm.
so, the straight answer is we don't have, we can do everything in terms of offering, like the content, the products, the brand, just opportunities for brand and ambassadors. And but if they aren't believers, then they're not going to be successful.
Mhm.
So it's striking to me, um the differences of people that are really, it, you can feel it when you walk in the store, it from certainly from a customer perspective.
Mhm.
And it's like the the retailers that have energy and enthusiasm have more sales, because for them, when a woman walks in the door, it's like they have something very differentiated that they can already talk about to her, right? Whether or
Yeah.
not she ultimately chooses it, there
Exactly.
is a talking
It's a
point.
great tool. It's a great
And
tool
so
to
there,
be successful
yeah,
in sales.
again, if you are coming at it with a space of curiosity and, welcome, you're going to have such a different um, outcome. So,
Mhm.
yeah, retailers so important. And of course, today there's more direct to consumer
Mhm.
activity, and I think there'll be even more in the future. To me, that makes the retail space even more valuable, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's such a powerful moment. And I think if you're in the business of retail, to really champion, like what's the when somebody walks in the door, they chose to invest some of their time in your space. How are you going to meet them?
Exactly. And I think those times will become more precious for people in the future, analog experiences, now that everything gets so digitized and we're living so much in the digital space. I mean, we meeting digitally right now, and which is great that we can do this nowadays because we can't fly. I can't fly to US for a podcast recording. You can't come to Germany for that. But, the retailers, and I think that is a great chance for retailers nowadays that they are at that, they have people actually coming into their shop because they want to have their bike repaired. They want to come for some, consultancy. Then they maybe bring their wife with, who potentially maybe didn't want to buy a bike, but then they see all of a sudden they see a female oriented bike brand standing in the shop, and all of a sudden it catches their attention while her husband or boyfriend is in the shop. And these kind of things, these experiences, these analog experiences, create a lot of chances. That's why the retail shops, I think it's definitely something, you know, I believe it's very future proof. Bicycle retail stores, where maybe 10 years ago you would have said, online is taking over everything. But I believe that the retail space, specifically for our industry, is very, very important. And to have the right experience there for male and for female is a great chance.
I agree with you. I think community and connection is vital always, and now more than ever. And to have a space again, like you, um, as a retailer, have such an amazing opportunity to welcome more people into the sport. And it actually just, having a considered space and presence, it makes a huge difference. And I think one other note on what you just shared, Tim, was I'll still go. Well, it first started with like publications, like print publications. And
Mm.
we would have a thing where we'd flip through the publication till the first woman, page after page, until there was a woman on the page, right? I think that still I'll go to an event like Sea Otter or Eurobike, and I really am scanning and looking for representation. Like, who are we seeing on bikes? How are they represented? And it's still really interesting. We'll see the top step performing women athletes. They're represented well. Outside of that, the depictions can be really limited. And also when you then come into a retail space, as you were just saying, it's like, am I even welcome here? Like, there's nobody in this space that either looks like me or is even the same. Like, I don't even see an image of somebody that's me, like, similar to me. So these are things that are just they can be really invisible cues, but they're so important. And so again, I think there's very savvy retailers that are doing such a good job and touching all of the senses and welcoming people in. And as I wish that for every bike retailer, because I find cycling to be one of the most joyful activities, and I want more people to have that opportunity. And
Mhm.
I want them to feel, like, yeah, welcomed
Mhm.
into the spaces of cyclists. Yes.
So do you guys maybe have special programs or activation campaigns that you do with dealers when they maybe onboard Liv, or when you guys have a product launch specifically for that reason, that you create, at least for that few days or for that one day, a very welcoming female only space? Is that something you
Oh,
guys
that's a
do?
good question. Yeah, I think so. At the global level, one thing that we support retail events with the new product launch, for example. We'll try and really do a special introduction to dealers and make sure that they understand, kind of all the benefits of the product, and share the storytelling, so share the development story as well. And so we kind of are more in that dealer activation space, in the work that we're doing. And um, I don't know how they are leveraging that into kind of, special occasions with product launches. I will say, Liv is a partner with the Tour de France Femme, avec Swift. We're the white jersey sponsor. And with that, we really see that as an opportunity to celebrate women's cycling and to bring people together. And so we are trying to give retailers, kind of those assets and those plans to have a celebration, whether it's a ride or a watch party in the store, or
Mhm.
even it can be whatever event they want. But hey, this is something that we can all kind of celebrate. And so that is something that we're really, more and more intentional about, like, oh, what can we, how do we bring retailers into that opportunity?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I'm sure you guys, it's a successful thing. Like you explained earlier, that maybe some dealers, they don't carry all the sizes of all the bikes, and it's so important that you make potential customers sit on the bike and get the experience on a proper setup bike. Therefore, these road shows and these kind of activations are very, very helpful. Yeah. Um, I want to talk to you about professional cycling, which has exploded recently, or in recent years, let's say like this. We had Annemiek van Vleuten on the show a few weeks ago, and she also explained it a little bit, what happened the last years. But maybe you can tell us how Liv rode this wave of, professional female cycling the last years, and what are you guys? How are you invested in it?
How are we invested in it? Yes. I think for Liv, we have, so we work on the road side at the world tour level. And we also have a development team that is the Liv Alula Jaco team. And we also have a live racing program where we have a factory team that's at the UCI World Cup, cross country space. And then we have the racing collective, which is a syndicate of privateer athletes that are multidisciplinary. So that's where you find gravel and triathlon athletes. And for Liv, I think there's a couple of things where I spoke to a little bit before. I'll talk about the Liv racing program where we have a lot of control. It's, within our teams and organizations' hands. And for us, it's really important to, again, be intentional around how we're staffing, how we are working with athletes. Who are they? What are they sharing? How do we work together with them? Having a footprint at that World Cup level that's mostly women, it stands out. It's still like it's an anomaly, in that space to have a team and staff that is there's men involved as well, but mostly women. And so that's
But sorry, but the Liv team can only be females. Or
for
maybe
our racers, but for the staff we have a male
for the
mechanic.
staff. For the staff.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I
On
see.
the
Like
racers,
the
it's all male.
medics and the
And yeah,
physios and all that.
we've parsed the Liv
Okay.
team, the Liv racing team from the giant team that's been for a
Mm-hmm.
few years. So from the racing team, and then really thinking about, how do we support these racers, not only to like their best performances, but in their cycling journey. I love that our technical coach for the Live Factory racing team is Ray Morrison, who was an very successful professional enduro racer. And so this has been an off ramp for her. We're very lucky. She was Live sponsored, and now she's on the team and she's lending her expertise to this next generation of racers. So that's something where, again, like women within the industry, if you're coming up through a racing trajectory, is there what comes after within the industry? So there's that aspect of it. When we think about in the road space, we work with the teams, and I think for us, it's really celebrating those individuals, elevating kind of who they are, their stories, and I think that we are strong advocates for more broadcast, more visibility, more, like that's how it all works in that space is like it's more valuable the more eyeballs that can see it, right? So a big reason why, the Tour de France is such a strong tradition. And for the Tour de France Femme to come on and to have now be broadcast in over 190 countries is a very big deal. That just gives women's cycling so much more visibility. And we're really happy to be able to contribute to that, right? Like that is, again, we know that there's a through line between, seeing women racing at those levels and feeling inspired, and not to necessarily become a racer always, but to certainly like to ride a bike. It's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a space where it is evolving very quickly. I think the tour had a big impact on that. And we see like almost a growing chasm between the highest investment, the more budget that you have, you can kind of, pay for the biggest contracts and the, highest caliber talent. And so I think it's evolving, or it's developing in a way that feels a little uneven. At the same time, I
Because
think that
the broadcasting time is also still much shorter than the males are.
definitely, and that needs to
Yeah.
be improved. I mean, the Paris-Roubaix was a good example this year of
Mm.
just like last year, the women had their own day, their own race, and this year it was like just depending on what market you were in, but you just got a little bit of the women's race, right? This like
Mm.
tail end. So that's still, there's that. I think another, when I think about the ecosystem around women's professional racing, and there's excellent, podcasts and storytellers that are centering on women's sports. And so it's also investing in those and really ensuring that, like that there's awareness that they exist. That's also a big part of it. But I think that for Liv, it's not only having a team and to kind of tell about those individual riders, to support their stories, to celebrate the wins, of course, but it's also kind of giving greater meaning to some of the events and and then investing where we can in, amplifying visibility. Because when we're seeing, everybody's kind of seeing the numbers go up and up and up. And on the ground in France each year, I was there in 2022 and to last year, same thing. Just the energy on the ground, the participants, the spectating is like
Mm.
exponentially bigger. And so it's like one of those things where like, if seeing is believing, then I mean, I already believed. Like,
Mm.
we should all be believers by now that
Mm.
this is really, compelling and on a winning trajectory. And yet we still have to advocate for more. Um,
But you see improvement year by year.
I do think it's improving. Yes, I think I think also sometimes there is like a sense of like there's galvanizing moments. Like I do think the Tour de France Femme of X Swift, you see kind of,
Was a pivotal
wow,
moment somehow. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, not only like it's bringing everybody together, you're seeing it on the ground, you see the numbers, record viewing numbers. And so you're like, this, wow. And then you feel like somehow there's setbacks like this year and just like the opportunities for key races that are so limited for women's races. And you're like, okay, so again, there's progress, but it's not like this straight line. Uh, it's also like there's still a need for advocacy. And I think when economies are challenged or when there's, just like, oh, resources are stretched thin, the women's programs, the women's offerings, those are the ones that are still quite vulnerable.
Mm.
That's how
You
I
go
see
back to shrinking and pinking. Yeah.
it.
A
Well,
lot of a
like,
lot-
but it's like it's from my perspective, it's undeniable
Mm.
where, like we are in a place of for women's cycling that is truly a growth trajectory. And so um but there's the grassroots element, there's the building up of it, and then there's also the institutional forces, right? And we need both. So that part is the part that can feel uneven, and we'd have to keep still, working both, working with
Yes.
both.
Mm. Um, but beside the professional athletes that you guys sponsor and the teams that you guys run, you also have a very interesting community program, the Live Squad, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and yeah, how important it is for you guys.
Oh, absolutely. I think riding communities are vital. So for awareness, the communities are really uh, let's say, facilitated at the regional level. So we'd give Judith in Germany credit for what's happening in Germany and for the way that's being cultivated, right? Like, um, I think that it comes back to this, uh, at some levels, and maybe again, it's not in Germany, but at the very basic level, sense of safety and how women enter into, getting riding more and having communities of, to ride with, that where it feels safe, where you have connection, where you have opportunity for kind of that growth is so important. And also, I mean, for lots of reasons, but I mean, there's such a strong social benefit there too. So at Live, communities kind of, it's been integral in how do we, nurture communities? How do we bring people together? So there's that's always been a part of how the brand kind of comes to life in markets. So a squad example is really yeah, it's they're flourishing, they're doing great. I'm happy to see growth and consistent investment. And the other thing is, that there's a lot of unsung heroes in those spaces because you can organize a ride, but you need those riders that are welcoming. You need intention around like how do we ride together? You need that person that sets the tone for like, hey, we're glad that you're here. Let's ride safely, here's how we do it. And so it's with, it doesn't happen by accident that we have these powerful writing communities. It happens through, kind of conscientious actions and ongoing commitments. And so I love to see those examples. We also, in Asian countries, we have the Liv Cycling Club, which has been wildly successful, and similar things where people they come to their first ride with a kind of a new to them bike and not a lot of experience. And then they have these, they develop into ride leaders
Hmm.
and are, really
Are they all
changing.
volunteering, or are they like, are they somehow getting paid or
It
something by you
depends.
guys?
Yeah. So, there's not a blanket thing because sometimes they're in that kind of capacity where they have discounted products. Right? So that varies from one region to the next. And so there's not one set, kind of
Like
way of
more like
doing that.
co-factory sponsorship and something like that.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
incentive. I'd say more
Same.
incentives, right?
Uh,
So discounts, product discounts. But again, regardless if you're getting a discount, the commitment that takes is it's
mm.
more than we think. I don't know about you. Lately in where I
Well,
live,
it's a
there's
accountability every week to be there and to do these rides,
exactly.
no
Here's
matter
the
what.
route. Let's keep it safe. We're
Yeah.
going to communicate. Like that is an ongoing thing. And what I was starting to say is we have a growing women's gravel ride community. And I love still showing up when I can to those rides and just seeing in action, right? Earlier we talked about what's the impact and like, it's so far reaching, it can never be measured. Like how lives are changed in such simple ways, but with, again, intention and commitment and people showing up and saying, let's be safe and let's have fun. And, but you only have to go on a few rides. I've been around for a lot of years. And so, but you only have to go on a few to really see how, people's lives are positively influenced and impacted by this outlet. So Live Squad, Live Cycling Clubs, the all of the rides, those organized rides around the world, I think they are absolutely transformational. And I am so happy for, their evolution and development. And mostly just I like again, unsung heroes. I want to lift up every person that ever is leading a ride because it's like it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And I reckon it's also a global thing. So in all your markets, you have these communities.
We do at some level. There's some that are really, again, I think it looks different in different parts of the world. There's lots of
Mm.
reasons why, but that is something that, it's it's a really important aspect of how we um again express the brand through action.
Mm-hmm. And is Bonnie still riding in the one in Taipei? She's still
Oh,
part of it?
Bonnie's still writing for sure. I don't know if she did the tour, the tour of Taiwan this year. I don't know if she did or she did not, but she's a go-getter and she works with a trainer and she's on her bike a lot still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's like, ugh, I don't know.
No, but is she right? Is she going out with the community on the community rides?
Oh,
Because
you
that's
know
also part
what?
in the film. She did these
Yeah,
community rides in the beginning in Taipei.
yeah. So I don't know that she shows up regularly, but Bonnie's international traveler. And I know even last year we were doing a launch event in Spain and Bonnie had just been there and ridden with communities in Spain. So, yep, she still shows up. She's still out there. They have live days in Taiwan where they're kind of big organized rides, and I think Bonnie does her best to participate in those as well. So she's out there. Yeah.
Um, so I would like to come to my last question, and that would be, if is there any white spaces that you see that Liv has not yet occupied,
Mm.
and what kind of version will we see from Liv in like 10 years time from now, roughly,
Hmm.
if you have the imagination?
What I see is that there's more opportunity to bridge um, an interest in cycling that might even start with an indoor cyclist
Hmm.
into outdoor adventure. There's huge opportunity there. But
You mean like transform from indoor, like let's say in a gym, and then eventually pick up the real bike and go on the road?
yeah, I do. I
Okay.
think for example, I know a lot of people that are riding indoors at their own home and love. There's a strong community, angle for them. There's also time efficiency. And I understand all those drivers.
Mm.
And I would love to have them feel safe enough to take that outside. And Tim, I do think that there is an aspect of like safety. And it's not just like, are the roads safe or the trails safe? It's also, um, is it safe on the bike? Is it safe for me in some countries as a woman
Mm.
who can still
Even
feel
riding in some communities, in community rides, is it safe there? Because
and that
you know.
when we consider, yeah, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like that is it still is a deciding factor for some women. So, in terms of a space of opportunity, I think there's something there, and I think about it so much, like what are the ways to effectively create that bridge, like and keep the connection, the aspect of what appeals about the writing, and even to some level, understanding that time is constraint the timing constraints for some people, but have an offering that really brings them out of doors. And perhaps that's just because my experience, I have a joy of being outside and outdoors, and the sense of adventure and the exhilaration of riding bikes outside is to me like always the best. I just want that for more people, and I want more people to see that opportunity for themselves. Um, and yeah, so I'm very curious about that. Um, in terms of live in 10 years and where it can go and be, I think that there is so much space for uh, serving a broader population of riders globally. I want Liv to really be a big part of that, to continue to be an advocate, to tell that impact story, going back to your previous question about its importance. I think that having writing groups and communities, I don't think that it needs to be fancier. I know there's new types of, I mean, we know the e-bike is the growth in that space is continuing to have an impact. It brings people into cycling. For me, it's less about like what bike are they riding, and more about are people riding safely and or in community and or in ways that are satisfying their soul and their needs, whether it's for
Mhm.
like a mobility and a utility function or a recreational function. I want Live to continue to be integral in creating more access and more opportunities for more, women, girls, humans on bikes. That's what I
Mhm.
want for Live in the next 10 years. So, yeah, I
Mhm.
am an optimist. I think we touched a little bit on, yes, culture is changing. It's a digital age. There's more, connecting in this way. But even the value of connection and interaction and riding bikes, for me, that is like timeless. And
Mm.
it is I think it is going to become, uh, I
Even
don't
more
know, even
important.
more valuable
Yeah,
in the coming years. So,
I believe so too. I believe so too. I think we have to also, as an industry, like what I also touched a little bit earlier, we have to become a little bit more easy access
yeah.
so that we get a broader audience in, get more females in, and we need to talk more the language of people who are not like who may be looking for different types of mobility, or they're just looking for a new physical outlet, and they don't want to be so deeply knowledgeable about all these kind of products and all that
Yeah.
jazz, and they want to experience transformation, basically,
Mhm.
because that's, at the end of the day, that's what it is. That's what people eventually seek for, whether it be in mobility, whether it be in sport, but people want to transform somehow, and we must make it easy for them to see and show them this is the way how you can transform. You don't first have to go to university and study all the terms that we guys throw around all the time, but you can join in. Everybody is welcome.
Yes. Yeah, I believe that. And I think, yeah, transformation. And I think that, um, for me, like being on a bike, that's when I have transcendent moments, and those moments
Mm.
of, I think that's the other piece of it too. That's just when I say soul satisfying, I think that's a part of it, of just like, um, yeah, people, we need that. And it connects us with a sense of awe that is really vital as well. So I fully agree with you. And I love that we get to look at ways to make cycling more accessible, to lower those barriers to entry, and to signal welcome at Live. And yes, we can always be doing it differently and better. And that's what we're here to do. It's fun.
No, it's basically the core of your identity then. Yeah, it is. Thank you so much, Cassandra.
Thank you,
Very
Tim. I really
nice.
appreciate this opportunity.
Movement. Branding for the bike industry is an Adlibs branding studio creation. New episodes appear regularly, irregularly on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Deezer, and YouTube. If you like the episode, then please consider following the Movement Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating. If you have any questions or comments, use the comment feature right below this episode, or go to adlibs.io and send us a message. Thanks for listening.